Most of us, if not all of us, carry around images in our minds from life experiences. And some of the images we carry around bring us a lot of joy and happiness and make us just glad to be alive. Other images, though, my guess is, for you, perhaps are more troubling. They might even haunt you. And I have a couple of images in my mind that haunt me that I want to share with you. The first image is about a woman that I know very well. She is well along into her 80s. She was married for over 50 years, had an incredible loving marriage along with several children, and life for this woman was wonderful. Sure, there were tough spots, losses, and things to worry about, and sure, she had to deal with the kinds of things that life throws at most people. But for decades in her life, life was as it should be, as one would want it to be. In the early years, the house was filled with the sounds of joy and children. Her husband had a fulfilling career. Church was a consistent part of the family's life. And then the years passed and time progressed. The children grew, they married, they started families of their own, they moved out. And then she and her husband cherished time together and his retirement, and life was really great. One day her husband did not feel well, and cancer was the reason, and he died after a short and valiant struggle. That was over 10 years ago. Well, now the woman lives alone. Her children are either sadly indifferent, or they live too far away to have a practical impact on her day in and day out life. And nearly every week the phone rings once or twice, but it's with the news of the death of another lifelong friend. The woman is in great health, but she aches, not from physical pain, but from the beast of loneliness. There's only one sound in her house now, and this is what haunts me. Only one sound in her house now, and it's the sound of a grandfather clock ticking. It is her company, her companion, the one thing she can count on. And what haunts me is the image of this woman sitting in a chair with no one around other than that sound. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The next image that haunts me comes from my childhood, and I'm ashamed to say that this is part of my history. I grew up in a wonderful neighborhood. It was the 1960s. Doors were left open. Ozzie and Harriet lived right next door. Children could walk up and down the street. Child abduction? What on earth is that? And I had a number of friends, some of whom remain my friends, my lifelong friends to this day, except for one. His name was Arthur. We were 8 years old at the time. Arthur was 15, but that wasn't the problem. While we did not make fun of Arthur or taunt him, we never invited him to join in, despite the fact that he would seek us out to watch us have fun. We never asked Arthur to play with us, a fate perhaps worse than teasing. See, Arthur had Down syndrome. We called it mental retardation back then. Arthur watched. He wanted to play. We excluded him. Arthur's been dead a long time now. Sure, his life was shortened by the problem with his 21st chromosome. But I think that what killed him was being lonely. Shame on me. I carry lots of images around, but these two haunt me in a particular way that gets to me, and they get to me because I know, and God knows, that every human being is meant to belong, to be connected, not to be alone, and God forbid, not meant to be lonely. No one is supposed to be lonely. And isn't it funny, and have you noticed how a person can feel lonely even in a crowd? Especially in a crowd? In the book of Genesis, right at the beginning of the Bible, we find this verse. It's not good for a person to be alone, right at the beginning of the story. God said it's not good for a person to be alone. It's, in fact, a central theme of Scripture throughout. We're not supposed to be on our own. And in the earliest communities of faith, the worst thing that could happen to a person was to be cast out of community. Leprosy and other diseases that we often hear about in the New Testament were such a wicked thing to live with, not so much because of the disease, but because of the social isolation that was imposed. And listen to what Mother Teresa says about belonging. She said, even the rich are hungry for love, for being cared for being wanted, for having someone to call their own. And she also said this, you remember that this is coming from someone who spent her life with the absolute poorest of the poor. This is what she said. Loneliness and the feeling of being unwanted is the most terrible poverty. Well, as I reflect on these truths, it strikes me that the source of so many of our problems in our culture stem from loneliness, feeling isolated or ostracized. And just think about how many lonely people there are, whether the one who is bullied, the nerd, the widow, the one stuck in a rotten marriage, the one who wants a relationship but just can't find one. The list of the lonely is really long. Which is why this weekend is so important to me. It's Family Fest at the chapel. And it began Friday night with Todd Burpo and a band. Continued on to yesterday, goes on today. But as we have Family Fest weekend, it is essential that we remind ourselves that different people have different families. There is no one definition of family. This is not a politically correct, motivated statement. It's just the way that it is. So I wonder, when you think of the word family, I wonder what it is that you think of family. Who's in your family? What does your family look like for you? What does that mean? Think for a moment about who your family is or was and how you define it. Now, while I embrace and uphold and support and honor traditional families, I've also come to know that there are many kinds of families that not only work, but families in which children and adults alike thrive, or couples thrive, whether or not they're children. And Jesus had a very interesting definition of family found in our gospel reading today. Now, it's important to note that Jesus clearly supported the notion of, quote, traditional family. He spoke about it. But he never castigated those who were not part of such a family. And he also adds a twist as to what family means that caught a lot of people around him off guard. In the 3rd chapter of Mark, remember we heard these words. Jesus' mother and brothers arrived outside of a house where he was speaking. They stood outside and sent word to him, calling for him. And a crowd was seated around him and said, "Look, your mother, brother, and sisters are looking for you." And then Jesus has these extraordinary words. Who is my mother? Who are my brothers? And looking around at those seated, he said, "Look, here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother, sister, and mother." And it's here that Jesus gives us really an astonishing way to think about family beyond genetics, blood ties, or societal traditions. Jesus, in essence, says, look, when you have faith in God, when you do what God wants you to do, when you are a believer, you are all tied together as a family. And as Christians, Jesus says, you are my family, and don't forget your family to each other. That's why Paul in his letters, over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, how does he address those in Christian community? He says, my brothers and sisters. In churches that I've been in the past, I used to always say my brothers and sisters. It irritated people. I don't know why. You're not my brothers. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. So the bottom line is, you may live alone, you may feel alone, you may be alone, you may not be married, you may be married, you may have children, you may not have children, but regardless of what your life situation looks like and what kind of family you are part of or not part of, you, as a Christian, are part of God's family, and all of us, as followers of Jesus, are brothers and sisters in Christ. Wow. So what does this mean? It means whatever you're thinking or feeling or enduring today, you belong to God. We belong to each other. And you're really blessed, as I am blessed, because we are all part of this family called Snowmass Chapel. What an amazing family it is. We're also part of a worldwide family called Christianity. And this is the simple, comforting, life-giving, biblical truth. We are family. But families of all kinds, your own family, the Snowmass Chapel family, the family of believers, are called by God to keep some things in mind when it comes to family, whatever kind of family we're talking about. You see, families are not only meant for nurturance, love, security, and comfort, but they are also places where the rubber meets the road when it comes to our walk with Jesus. You want to test out your Christianity? Live in a family. And so for a few moments, I'd like to talk about just a few things we need to keep in mind about as a family of Christ followers. First and foremost, we all know this, but family relationships are messy. There's no such thing as a perfect family, so don't try. All families face challenges, hurdles, and things to work through together. All of them. Even the first family. I'm not talking about our president. Even the first family, the family of Adam and Eve, struggled mightily. In fact, they had to deal with some things that most families don't have to deal with. They had two sons that got into it so much that one, Cain, killed his brother Abel. That's the first family. And given that the first family was not immune from pain and suffering, I think it's a good reminder that all families have tough stuff to deal with. The takeaway from that is if families are not perfect, then we need to be prepared and step up to the plate and deal with things. We're not called to hide from family problems or cower from them or make excuses. We're called to deal with it and to face the reality that families can be a mess head on and tirelessly work for family health, joy, resilience, and be willing to do whatever it takes to overcome. But aside from this, fortunately, Scripture is chock full of great counsel for all kinds of families. And in the 6th chapter of Luke, Jesus has a sermon. It's called the Sermon on the Plain. He went on a hill. He was on a plain. Not a plane, but plain. And here, Jesus speaks to his disciples. He says, now listen to these words really carefully in the context of family. Don't pick on people. Don't jump on their failures, criticize their faults. Don't condemn those who are down. Be easy on people. You'll find life a lot easier. Give your life away. Giving, not getting, is the way. Be generous. Just think if families stuck to such counsel. Think if people within families didn't cut each other down. Think if people within families gave one another a ton of slack. Think if people within families didn't criticize or demean each other. Think if people within families were easygoing, generous, and selfless. That's what Jesus is talking about. Imagine your own family. Imagine our chapel family living by those biblical principles. Wow. Then a few verses earlier from this same section of Luke's gospel are these words. And these are pretty convicting, I think, for me. If you love only someone who loves you, will God praise you for that? Even sinners love people who love them. If you're kind only to someone who is kind to you, will God be pleased with you for that? Even sinners are kind to people who are kind to them. And again, here Jesus is speaking to his closest followers. Remember, he said, if you do the will of God, you are my brother and my sister. So he's really speaking to family. And he's speaking to all kinds of families, whether immediate families, extended families, or the Snowmass Chapel family. And these words are challenging, and they're challenging because I have known a lot of people who are kind and loving and do great deeds for other people. The problem Such love and kindness and great deeds are geared either toward complete strangers and not at all necessarily people within one's own immediate family. You see, our Christian walk and how seriously we take it is measured not so much by how we treat those who love us or those we don't know so well, but rather how we treat those who are having a hard time loving us, those we are having a hard time loving, or those that are closest to us in our own family. You see, we can do the great work for the benefit of all kinds of community organizations. Raise tons of money for great causes. Throw nice dinners for great causes or cocktail parties. But if we mistreat those who are closest to us within our immediate family, there is a huge problem. And this is exactly what Jesus was getting at for all of us who are part of the Christian family. And then finally, I just want to say there are Paul's words in his letter to the people of Corinth. We know the words in chapter 13, love is patient, love is kind, that Marion read. We know those words. We know them because they're read at virtually every wedding any of us have ever attended. That's okay. But the words that Paul wrote were written to the entire Christian family community of faith in Corinth. Those words. You see, within the Christian community at Corinth, within the family of Christians at Corinth, there were factions, there was dissension, there was undermining, there was just a lot of bad stuff going on. And Paul in his letter says, stop it. Stop it. Chapters 12 through 14, 13 is the love part, but that whole section is all a unit in which Paul highlights that everybody is a vital part of the Christian community. Everybody has a unique gift, and love needs to be at the center of everything. These are powerful words for families not only to ponder but to enact, because Paul makes it clear that love has nothing to do with feelings and emotion. Love has to do with action. Love is not about what you feel, it is about what you do. And God calls us to put love through action at the heart of family. Just think of the kinds of behaviors that would disappear, the hurt that would not happen, the letdowns and betrayals that go away if the verb love is the whole deal in a family. These words are not sentimental mush. They represent the highest standard to which we're called as brothers and sisters in Christ. A lot to think about, and I put some of this stuff in sermon notes in your bulletin. And as this weekend is Family Fest at the chapel, as I mentioned, I pray that every day in the life of the chapel that we will celebrate the fact that we are family. That we will make choices to work hard to have the kinds of families that God wants us to have. It's the centerpiece. We're not supposed to be alone. That we will have the kind of chapel family that God has in mind. And so remember, you belong. You belong here to this family, to God's family, to the family of all believers all over the world. And so let's continue this family work we're doing together. Seek out people who are lonely as a chapel, but seek out people who are lonely in your life today. Don't let another day of loneliness go by. And finally, I just want to give God great thanks that we are family. It's really a deeply, profoundly Christian song, isn't it? So let us pray.